Hello, everyone. Shay Robinson here with Seattle Real Producers, the show. And I am joined by Scott Wasner with Christie's International Real Estate. Scott, thanks for joining me today.
Good morning, Shay. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, I'm really glad we can do this today. I'd love if you just kind of introduced yourself and gave the crowd a little bit of information on you and kind of how you found your way into Christie's.
Absolutely. Again, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. So again, my name is Scott Wasner. I'm co-founder and executive vice president of Christie's International Real Estate Seattle, which is one of a handful of corporate offices around the world. I believe we have 7 corporate offices. We have over 900 offices in 48 countries and territories. So about a year and a half ago, I was approached by Christie's corporate out of New York to head up the Seattle office, which was a very big honor for me. I had been a co-founder with Realogics, Sotheby's International Real Estate for the previous 10 years. And my segue was primarily based on my clientele and their needs. Our parent company is a group called Artemis, and they own super luxury brands such as Gucci, Yves Saint Laurent, Balenciaga, Bottega Veneta, Ulysse Nardin watches, so on and so forth, just to name a few. Privately held company, which is extremely important to me. In addition to owning the Christie's auction house, which was founded by James Christie in London in 1766. The real estate arm was founded subsequently in 1995. The concept was we're selling the art, why not sell the walls? Mm-hmm. Our clientele is amongst some of the most prestigious and innovative leaders, business people, philanthropists around the world. So it's a complete honor for me to represent the brand in the Pacific Northwest. I have 2 partners that are based in Portland, and then again a partnership with Christie's corporate out of New York. So extremely interesting and very unique relationship for me because I have weekly conversations with our global CEO. I have direct access to the very top. So definitely a collaborative approach, which is very refreshing for me.
Yeah, so obviously not your everyday real estate brokerage. I'd love to go back a little bit and kind of talk about how you got into, because everybody has a different story, how they found themselves in real estate. And for you, I think where you are now, it comes a lot from kind of your upbringing and being in that luxury world. Can you go back a little bit and talk about how you where you started and then how you found yourself into just real estate in general?
Absolutely. It's interesting. I was one of those kids on Sundays after church. I'd beg my parents to go look at open houses, even as a small guy. Mm-hmm. I always found it very interesting, not in the Snoopy sense of how people live, but just to see how other people's architecture and taste was. And again, that was at a very young age, and it just kind of stuck with me over the years. Previous life, I had been an assistant to a very top broker down south, migrated into the public relations business. I served as a publicist and PR manager for a number of years, got to do some really incredible things post-White House, dignitaries, celebrities, did some media shows, road shows, a lot of press interviews. So that was really exciting. That built my foundation for the appreciation for media such as yourself, and really garnering and taking advantage of those relationships in a mutually beneficial way. I'm very fortunate now. I have great relationships. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Mansion Global. A lot of our properties and stories are featured on a regular basis around the globe. So that's a nice feature for my clients. After the PR business, I was actually recruited by one of our clients, which was at the time the world's finest cruise line.
Nice.
And I'd always had a passion for travel. So young age, early 20s, I was able to travel the world, be paid for it, and have it paid for. So at this point in my life, I've been to close to 50 countries multiple times. My passion for travel is parallel with real estate, I believe. But just overall, the publicity opportunities, the travel industry, the hospitality really created the foundation for my client service, the attention to detail, discretion, white glove service. Mm-hmm. So all those really helped my transition into real estate.
So what was that, again, it's very niche, right? It's not your everyday
Correct.
Brokerage. And what was the learning curve like going from kind of that high-end travel industry and then really transitioning into real estate. I doubt it was seamless, but I'm sure that there was some carryover there.
Definitely not seamless, but a lot of carryover. Again, treating everyone like a VIP, whether you're a first-time buyer or own multiple homes. I've never done business with a friend, but clients have turned into friends. I've been extremely fortunate to build a foundation of repeat business and referrals.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing for me is I've never been a salesperson, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
but more of a relationship person, and that's proven fruitful for me over the years.
No, that makes sense. So I'd love to know a little bit about anytime you're with a brokerage like Realogics and as a founding member, what was that decision like? Obviously, it's an honor to have somebody like Christie's kind of seek you out. How long did that take for you to make that transition and really go, okay, I'm going to go all in and give this a go?
Right. It was, again, a very big honor for me to be asked one of the co-founders of Realogics, Sotheby's, and that was just over 10 years ago. There was a very small group of us to start with. I think there were 6 or 7 of us. So a very small group that's now morphed into, gosh, they're incredible. I think they have 300 or 400 brokers.
Mm-hmm.
The Christie's relationship, now that it's happened, I could say it, the courting had been going on for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was extremely happy in my previous situation. But the ability to treat my business as I wanted to, more of a private client approach. We don't have a storefront location. We just have private executive offices. And we don't have interest in storefronts in the Northwest at this point. Very, very small group, target approach. Number of our clients are auction house clients as well. So that crossover is an extremely powerful relationship. But the transition was, I mentor a lot of young brokers, and there's no other business like this in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You can go from 0 to 0 and vice versa in 2.2 seconds, right? Without blinking an eye. But my deal is I never, you get your license and you call your friends and your family and your neighbor, and suddenly just because you have your license, you have this major sense of entitlement that you should entrust me with probably your most precious and largest asset.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never used that approach. I've been very humble and appreciative. I was very fortunate. My first gig was to represent the Four Seasons private residences in Seattle. And that was in the bottom of the last downturn, which a lot of people have already forgotten. But, I was sitting on $45, $50 million of luxury real estate. And my first sale was a $7.2 million penthouse. And I was fortunate enough to represent the buyer and seller. So
Nice.
First paycheck of that magnitude definitely sets the bar for you. But I've been honored to set the bar for luxury penthouses and real estate record prizes over the last number of years.
So, looking at that luxury market and for me as the publisher of Seattle Real Producers, I am very fortunate where I get to interact with so many different kinds of brokers. Absolutely. And luxury and new construction and residential. And, we had Beth Traverso on, who was out in Fall City, and the stories are all different, and there are some parallels, but just looking at that luxury side of it, it's not an easy, code to crack, right? So, starting out with a $7 million, property where you're on both sides, like you said, it does set the bar high. If, I hear from certain brokers like, oh, I'd love to crack into that luxury market, or, they see a low amount of transactions with with high prices on them. Are there anything that you can point to on your end that have gotten you that success? Is it just your background and that white glove service? Is it consistency? Anything you can point to in that area?
I would say all the above. Again, always be appreciative.
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually asking people what I could do for them versus the opposite. That's a big thing. It's such an easy business to take and take and take.
Yeah.
I hate the term hit it and quit it, but there's a lot of that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Very big on correspondence, keeping in touch with former clients. The discretion, I think, is a very big thing. This is such an easy business to get excited and talk about deals. The level of clientele, again, even if you're a first-time buyer, I don't think it's appropriate to be talking about business outside of your clientele. Another area that's really helped me is inserting myself into situations I'm passionate about, such as volunteering. Currently sit on a few boards, sit on the Pike Place Market Foundation. Everyone thinks of Pike Place Market where you go buy your fish. That's a cooperative part, but there's an actual foundation. We have health care, child care, food bank, and medical care. And I've been in Seattle 25 years, and I look at Pike Place Market as one of my true passions and the foundation of Seattle, which I'm so fond of. So that's an area that I really have put myself into financially, time-wise. In this business, it's, time is very precious. I also sit on the board of the World Trade Center, which is a global organization promoting international business. And it's a very, very big honor for me to sit with titans of industries. So I would say connections. If you're passionate about something, figure out where you can volunteer without expectations. Do it from your heart, and it'll pay back, I believe.
So has that, serving on boards and kind of that nonprofit side, has that always been part of your makeup, or did that come more to fruition once you got into real estate, or can you talk me through that a little bit?
It's always been a passion of mine, especially animals, Seattle Humane Society, volunteering when I was younger, whether it was magazines, magazine door-to-door sales, things like that. That takes me back to my childhood. We'd have magazine drives. If most listeners know what a magazine is, hopefully they're looking at real producers right now. But at that age, I figured out, back to the relationships at church or wherever I was, be like, all right, I would talk to Dr. So-and-so, and they own a doctor's office, and you go to the doctor's office, and there's magazines everywhere. So, sure, Scott, come on down, talk to our office manager, and office manager would be like, we'll take one of everything. So it's things like that. I remember it's always kind of a young entrepreneur. I remember my first true business was harvesting lily pads, which are in ponds. We grew up with a beautiful Japanese garden at our home. And my father and I would go to the nursery, and we'd get koi fish or fish food or lily plants. And I noticed these plants, and I was thinking of some friends of ours. I helped mow their lawn or something, and they had this massive pond. So I had the idea to start harvesting these. The nursery owner would give me the pots and the gravel and all this. So I would get out there, which most people couldn't believe, but out in the muck with the snakes and, bugs and all this, and harvest these lily pads, repot them, take them down. And I don't know, I probably made $2 each or something, and he was selling them for $5. So at a young age, I really had that entrepreneurial instinct.
Did that come from your upbringing, or were your parents like, oh man, watch out, he's slinging lily pads already. Like, what do we need to worry about?
I had the most amazing upbringing. It was upper middle class. We weren't rich, but by means, we had, a very nice lifestyle. But work ethic from both of my parents is definitely instilled in me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to bring up was, you being in Seattle for 25 years, and obviously with the current climate that is, going on in Seattle. And to me, it was really refreshing, just kind of the optimism you had about the city that you call home, and, you still live in downtown. And it's been a home for me, almost my whole life as well. And I take a lot of pride. It's been hard to, see what's kind of unfolded. From your standpoint, how do you maintain kind of that optimism, knowing that, it's not too late for this city to kind of get back to what it used to be?
Right. I think the key to remember is it's just not Seattle. I mean, it's all over the world.
Yeah.
Seattle, unfortunately, got a lot of press, due to the original outbreak of COVID within the U.S. So that was definitely a stigma for us. It was heartbreaking to watch what was going on during the riots. I sat in my living room. I live downtown, top of a building, and watching the news on TV and looking out my window and seeing cars being burned and buildings being looted. Definitely a scary time, but again, I think we'll have to keep in mind it's not just Seattle. It was unfortunately throughout the country and the world.
Yeah.
So I think we have to, come together as citizens and proud Americans. But our city of Seattle, there's nothing like it. Again, I've traveled the world, but just the architecture, the people, such a diversified demographic and diversified industries, from aerospace to coffee beans to tech. I think we are definitely ahead of the game as far as the U.S. as far as diversified economy, incredible wages. You could be kayaking or skiing within 20, 30 minutes of downtown Seattle. But just the overall appeal of Seattle and the culture, the arts, and the people, I think, are quite frankly some of the nicest I've ever met. And Seattle has definitely always been a melting pot. I think definitely will continue to be. And I'm, again, quite optimistic. I know it's my job, but I personally, as a resident of downtown Seattle, and of the last 25 years, I've owned numerous properties. I think it's one of the best cities in the world. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. And, especially with social media, it's really easy for people to point fingers, right, but not try and evoke change or try and have that faith and that optimism that it still can turn around instead of just everybody yelling out, out into the world about what they're angry about. Looking at, kind of segueing into, we saw it in Seattle, but like you said, we saw it all over the world with COVID and with the pandemic. Has I love to kind of pick the brains of agents and just ask, did you evolve? Did you realize like, hey, I can be more efficient on this end? Or what did you kind of learn about yourself and your business in the last 12 to 14 months?
It's definitely one of the most challenging personally and professionally for me. You're talking to a guy that pulls a 12-hour workday. That's out in the field. I mean, breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, dinner meetings, networking events. Suddenly, you had the stop button pushed. I think that was the hardest part for me. And then, of course, not being able to do open houses or face-to-face meetings, and suddenly nobody can breathe because they're wearing a mask and six feet apart and all of this stuff. But you had no choice. You had to adapt. We had one of our best years ever last year. And I think that goes back to having your own personal stability and relationships. So, this thing called Zoom became your best friend, right? We've always done media advertising, videos. Matterport became one of our new best friends as well, the virtual tours, the floor plans. So we deal with a lot of out-of-state buyers. And even if you're 2 blocks away, you weren't able to see a property. So definitely embracing the technology, picking up the phone and calling people.
Yep.
Whether it's business or not, just to hear from somebody during the pandemic, I think was a huge boost for a lot of people. Because let's face it, we all had a hard time, being shut-ins.
Yeah.
So, but definitely embrace more of the technology, whether it's voice calls, emails, email blast, video, Matterport.
Was there a learning curve there for you, or was it pretty natural because of the systems you already had in place?
I'm not a big tech guy. Fortunately, I'm surrounding myself with some very sharp people. I'm more of the director, if you will.
Yeah.
But it's, I know what I want. I know what works for me. I know what works for my clients. I'm not your typical broker. I don't do, weekly newsletters. And again, everyone's business is their business. Some brokerages treat brokers as employees sometimes, I feel. And I think we quickly forget that, we're all, if you have 400 brokers, you basically have 400 businesses under one roof. But it's easy to blend, especially when you have such a diversified group of individuals, whether it's bankers or parents that are new to the industry or retired folks or brand new brokers. It's easy to transition your former life or try to into real estate. But my advice would treat it as your own business. Your first paycheck, you should treat as your last. I usually do, unfortunately, because you just don't know.
Yeah.
But that's what's also exciting is one phone call could change everything for you, good way or bad way. So yeah, it's definitely been a big change.
So just going off of what you just said right there, it got me thinking, you have the agent that says, I wake up every day like I could be unemployed tomorrow, to your point. Did it take some getting used to where, your homes, the homes and the condos and the things that you're selling have the higher price point but they're not as frequent. So did it take some getting used to from the balancing? Like, I know that these homes might take a little bit longer to sell, but obviously the return is a little greater than your typical residential listing. Was that an easy thing for you because of your past and your history and the kind of the work you did before, or was that something you had to get used to as well?
Absolutely. I think my former career life definitely helped me. transition. I dealt with budgets of P&Ls and managing sales teams and expectations of ups and downs. I mean, the travel industry is one of the most volatile industries in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and who would have thought real estate would be one of the strongest during a pandemic? It was similar to 9/11. Nobody went out to dinner. Nobody was shopping. Suddenly everyone was nesting. They wanted to remodel their kitchens or home theaters. So there were certain sectors of the economy that boomed while others tanked. So I think you really have to think outside the box and be prepared for what's next. These circumstances are unfortunate, but they definitely have to be learning curves and experiences for all of us.
Yeah, that makes sense. So from your standpoint, looking at, yesterday you were on a ferry, and the travel is frequent. Does that, what kind of role does that play into like when you're setting out like your schedule or you're looking at a possible listing? Are you're in the mindset now of like, I can go anywhere at any time, or how do you kind of plan things out?
It's one of the favorite things about the business practice that I built is we're not neighborhood centric. My tagline is City Escape. We do everything from islands to waterfront to penthouses, single family homes. It's funny you ask about schedules. I'm a big list guy. I mean, everything's down to the last minute. 90% of the time, that's tossed out the window. People's schedules change. There's traffic, weather change. So I think, again, if you're transitioning into this industry, you really have to be extremely flexible, yet detail-oriented, if that makes sense, at the same time, which is usually quite a hard combination. My background, again, in corporate world is you had a very set schedule, corporate travel. This one, we had a call to go for a listing appointment yesterday that turned into 2, and that turns into a full day. You have ferries and travel time and meetings, but we absolutely love it. We love being on the move.
So you talked a little about mentoring new brokers, and again, going back to like the luxury side of things. When you are talking to a new broker, or like just if there's a new broker watching, what would you say in this market would be, and not even necessarily cracking into luxury, but just a new agent in general? Are there any things that you would say, like as far as, do you need systems in place, or you need to learn, you need to go on as many listing appointments as possible? Any tips that you would think that really would kind of cultivate success early for an agent in such a crazy market?
Sit back and listen. Don't be a know-it-all. I mean, I've been doing this a few years, and I still learn every day. Every day. There's always something new to learn, whether it's personalities, new businesses coming and going. I encourage everyone to follow the news locally and regionally, and avoid things such as politics, and try to keep it positive, but be in the know. One of my favorite resources is the Puget Sound Business Journal, especially their online edition. You get up-to-minute news of who's coming, who's going, what's happening. So be aware of your surroundings, listen. For new brokers now, I think it's an exciting time because the market is on fire. I believe, I was just reading something the other day, I think as opposed to a year ago, there's half as many houses available properties, and now there's twice as many brokers. That's a big sea of fish there.
Yeah.
But my team and I have just recently been out doing brokers opens, and I really miss going out and seeing people and seeing properties, because I miss that face-to-face with colleagues, and just that networking. Get your name out there, get your business card out there, learn the neighborhoods, learn the different types of properties. If somebody calls you about a listing, you may know where it is, but what are the views? What's the surrounding area? What are the amenities of the neighborhood or the building? So knowledge is key. So, and a lot of this, fortunately, in a digital age, you can research online, whether it's a condominium building or the best schools, best restaurants, travel times, things like that. But knowledge is absolutely key. You always have to be learning.
Well, it's a great point. I think the listening part is huge, right? Because so many agents, especially with social media, it's like everyone wants to show what they look like.
Right.
But really it does come down to how you can service your clients and the knowledge that you can, use to land them in the best spot, or, especially in a multiple offer scenario.
Right.
You've talked about your team a little bit. I'd love to know, like, when you and I first spoke, you talked a little bit about kind of the people you have in place behind you, and that you were maybe looking to grow, but it had to be the right fit. Can you kind of give me a view on what your team looks like and where you're going from here?
So I don't manage a team. I have individual brokers that are with us.
That's right.
That contribute. I have a marketing team, transaction coordinator, so that's support. But I've worked with brand new brokers. I've worked with seasoned brokers. It's all about attitude for me, willingness to learn. And again, it's back to the listen. Don't pretend to know it all. You're speaking of social media, we call it the kind of flash, cash, and dash, right?
Mm-hmm.
And social media is absolutely key in this business. It is.
Mm-hmm.
I do a little bit on Instagram, and that's really never anything personal about my life. It's more of the lifestyle that I represent for my branding and my clientele. But to be able to talk about cars or travel or watches or cigars or wine or pets, and true talking points, those, it gets you front and center with your clients and shows a true connection versus, again, you're just trying to be a salesperson. So social media definitely plays a key role in our business and overall industry. But for me personally, it's not something that I live and die for. I'd rather have the personal connection, but definitely a necessity.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like, if it's funny, you have the people that do base their business off social media, right, and usually the numbers aren't, the same as what their social media page looks like.
Correct.
Which I always find fascinating.
And again, each to their own.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you. But I think honesty is key. I don't think you should be ashamed of what you drive or over proud of what you drive or where you live or what you wear. Something I learned at a very young age traveling. You can have style and class without having a lot of money. It comes down to presentation and tailoring. I mean, guys are lucky in the sense you could own one suit and have 30 different outfits based upon shirts or turtlenecks or ties. Women have a little bit more of a challenge with all the shoes and jewelry and different looks. So I feel fortunate that I can travel with one suit and have many looks. But I think just be true to yourself and represent who you are. And I think it's fun to mix it up and create an image of where you want to be if you're not quite there yet. I wholeheartedly support goals and dreams.
I love it. So you talked a little bit before about, your clientele is not, again, you're not your everyday, residential clientele, but you don't look at it as like you're a salesman. You look like you're an advisor. Right. And being able to kind of be on their level when it comes to all those things you just mentioned. Again, was that something that, again, came from your background, or did you have to kind of put your foot down and go, hey, I'm not going to be that sales guy, I'm going to be your consultant?
I think it's naturally in my DNA. I'm a trusted advisor. I spent a lot of time in boardrooms at the executive table, lawyers, financial advisors. So I become a key adversary or a key advisor for my clientele. One of the areas that I really love that I was able to utilize from my past life is traveling. Being with someone like Christie's International Real Estate, we have offices all over the world. My typical client owns numerous homes. So to be able to have a referral source, I've actually traveled with clients and advised them on a consulting and referral basis of properties in different parts of the world and the country. So I love that aspect of this industry.
So I have to ask, like, what is that like, if you're flying on a plane with a client to go to a property and you show up and it's like, I'm not so sure. I mean, you really have to, that puts a lot on you.
I've talked clients out of buying things before, locally and other places. That's my job, is to advise and be honest. Again, it's not all about the paycheck.
Well, with those type of clients, and then with the market being hot and all of those kind of aspects into it, has the luxury market seen the same kind of uptick that your typical residential, where people are going up over asking and there's multiple offers, or does luxury still stand kind of alone and have a different kind of process?
I would say a combination of both. I mean, you're seeing the lower price points and the higher price points competing offers. Depends on the regions. Obviously, downtown Seattle's had a bit of a struggle for obvious reasons. We're definitely seeing a bounce back there. East side is definitely seeing record growth.
Yeah.
So there are definitely pockets. You're seeing a lot of people that have been renting $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month that realize they could actually have a backyard and a home. So you're seeing a lot of people that are moving pretty far out of Seattle, which I think is great. But I also think people have to keep in mind that the switch is coming back on. I think it's going to be very quickly. And a lot of companies will want people back in the offices for financial purposes, but also the camaraderie and the personal interaction. Nothing beats face-to-face meetings. And, just that personal interaction. People need it. They're hungry for it. So I have a feeling some people might regret moving so far out when suddenly they're faced with a 30-minute commute or a 3-hour commute versus, 30 minutes getting out of bed and turning on a computer in the morning after you have your coffee. So,
did you have those clients where they were like, oh, I don't have to go in the office anymore. I'm going to get out of here. And already they're like, they're regretting it, or?
We have some, and we're actually meeting with some after this meeting today that, they're on the cusp of, they've changed neighborhoods about 12 times, I think, in the last month as they see things progressing. So, yeah. And again, that goes back to your knowledge of, okay, you want to live on Bainbridge, you have a ferry, you have to get to the ferry, or you want to live on the east side, and how are you going to commute? So it goes back to that basic knowledge of knowing neighborhoods and areas. And again, technology is so readily available. You can look at commute times and things like that. So,
do you, obviously with a focus in downtown Seattle, and that being where you even live, have you expanded like to the east side or up north, or, like taking a ferry, or is that just really part of, you go where your business takes you? What does that look like for you?
It's always been business is where it takes us. Yeah.
Okay.
And we sell east side, we sell islands up north, San Juan's, downtown. So
okay.
Very mixed bag of business. Sorry.
So I have to ask, with the travel, do you have, 50 countries? For a lot of people, they can't even fathom that. And even myself, I'm like, oh man, I think I'm at like 6 or 7.
Right.
Have you had a favorite spot that you're like, oh, I would love to go back there, I'd love to live there someday, or are you always going to be a Seattle guy?
I definitely think about areas. Italy is a very special place to me. France, I think in the dream world, I would have a place in Seattle and New York and London. That would be the perfect setup for me. But as far as my favorite travel place, that's probably the most common question when people hear I've traveled so extensively. But honestly, there's really not been a place I haven't enjoyed. I try to absorb and appreciate as much culture as possible. And that's where I feel that I've been blessed, that I've been to countries numerous times. So you really get to dig in after the iconic tour spots and get to know the food and the culture and how people live. I was recently in India for business about 1.5 years ago, and countries like that are emerging, there was never really a middle class. It was either poverty, extreme wealth. And I remember I was staying at one of the top hotel brands in the world, and I got there in the middle of the night, wake up in the morning and look out, and you're surrounded by slums, and here you're in a hotel room that's $1,000 a night. So it really educates you from the sense of what you have, and to be appreciative and be cognizant of what's going on in the world, how much we have and how little people have.
So looking at something like traveling to India, are you actually doing real estate there, or are you like, what, can you take me into that a little bit?
That was actually for an office opening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, with the referral partnerships, we do a lot of collaborative marketing, promoting other colleagues' properties, which is great for us because someone in New York or someone in Paris or London could see one of our properties and be in the market or know someone.
So we've talked about it a little bit, and I know I always hear the agent term of, I don't have a crystal ball,
Right.
But looking at kind of where we have been as as whether it's a county or a state or a country or even the world, do you have any idea on what what you think you're going to see when it comes to real estate. You talked about there being half as many listings
Right.
and twice the brokers.
Right.
Do you think that those numbers are going to eventually even themselves out? And which one's going to come first, do you think?
I do think things will even out, especially once the vaccine program is completely rolled out. From what I've read and sources I know that are pretty intelligent individuals predict that there will be a post-COVID boom, economic boom. I definitely think there will be a correction for a lot of areas. The Northwest has done extremely well. You've seen people getting back in the flipping business and things like that. That sends up a bit of a red flag for me. I still think long-term hold properties are great investments. Multifamily property are great investments. First-time buyers. But again, you have to look at it long-term of commutes and are you going to have a family or no family? Are you going to work from home or not work from home? Do you have pets? Things like that. So I think it really comes down to the individual to figure out what they want. But overall, big picture, I think we're looking pretty good here. But I could see a small correction coming at some point.
So I have to talk about, the Humane Society is a big part to you. And then obviously your golden retrievers,
Right.
So again, has that just come from upbringing or is that something that you've always been passionate about or?
Always been passionate about animals, yeah. I was extremely honored to have been invited to be part of a fundraising campaign for the Seattle Humane Society, able to build the new facility. I don't know if you've been there or listeners have been there, but incredible facility, partnered with Washington State University School of Medicine, veterinary medicine. Remember the first time I went and took a tour of Seattle Humane, they're doing surgeries out in these like little portable trailers. And if you're a vet, you hardly get to practice on real animals. If you're a medical doctor, you have a lot of practice in ERs and various other areas. But to be a vet, to have to treat so many different animals in such limited conditions, it was such an honor and so exhilarating for me. We raised over $30 million.
Jeez.
A lot of it was private money. So that was a huge passion for me. I've always been a golden retriever guy. I'm down to one now. I lost one about a year and a half ago, but I currently have a 14-year-old named Tai Tai, who's my best buddy. He's actually on the car right now.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, it's just that having that companionship, there's nothing like it.
And you said you were looking to get a few
I'm in
more.
the process of getting another one. Right.
I love it. Well,
I would have like 10 if I could.
Is there any restrictions in where you live to how many dogs you can have?
I can have a couple. So.
You know the right people.
It's funny. Nobody knows me in my building, but they know my dog. Or, you're Tai Tai's dad. So
of course.
Yeah.
So does the dog travel with you a lot?
He does. Yeah, as much as possible.
That's so cool. Yeah. Well, Scott, I just want to thank you for coming on here. I think what you do is so different, so different than a lot of people might realize, or a lot of brokers out there just don't really have the knowledge. So I think you can take some great stuff away from kind of that knowledge you imparted on us, and I just am so appreciative that you came on today.
It's a major privilege for me to be here, and again, I greatly appreciate the invitation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right.